Great, so we're going to get started on today's presentation. If you're joining, this is the fiscal year 2022-2023 research solicitation public meeting, where we will be presenting on the final project that's included in this fiscal year's funding. It would be really helpful if you could add your name, affiliation, and whether you're looking for a partnership for this project in the chat to everyone. Also note that this meeting is being recorded and we will upload the recording to our solicitation landing page, as well as an ADA compliant version of these slides. So we'd like to thank you all for joining this public meeting. The research program at CARB informs CARB's air quality and climate programs with sound science. The research projects we intend to fund this year were chosen through a publicly informed process and approved by the board on January 27th of this year. Today, we will be presenting on the final project for this funding year solicitation. Note that we have made several changes to our research program processes to increase transparency and clarity for both the public and the researchers we work with. This is the second year we have held the solicitation public meeting to provide guidance to all prospective contractors. We have also provided several online tools to help guide you in the application process. We will highlight these tools throughout the meeting and post links in the chat. Finally, we have made changes to our program to focus on equity and how we set our research priorities and on what types of projects we fund. And the one we are talking about today is one of those projects. More on that can be found in the triennial plan. And that's a good segue into the next slide. So can anyone just confirm that you can see my slides?
I can see it.
Great, thanks. Okay, so every 3 years we compile information on our past and current research projects in the triennial plan, as well as our future research priorities. The document provides a roadmap for our research covering the next 3 fiscal years. So we have one that covers fiscal years 2021 through 2024. And again, it includes our research priorities, our research planning process, and it has a catalog of past and current research efforts. It was developed with public input, and it's really essential in guiding our annual selection of research projects and in delineating our new research priorities. A link has been added in the chat. Our website also has a lot of useful information, including a solicitation landing page for this project, and a link to our annual comment and concept collection survey, also on information on our research screening committee. And we also have a contract catalog where you can search for all completed and active contracts. Finally, we have been hosting our solicitation on the Empower Innovation website, which provides easy access to funding opportunities from the CEC and other providers like us. And it includes curated resources, events, and connections to people and organizations. CARB's projects are available on the Empower Innovation site, and you can use that platform to find a partner by announcing your interest in a funding opportunity and message other interested parties. Okay, great. So today we are going to be talking about the final project included in the funding year 22-23 solicitation. The project is titled Community Engagement and Community-Centric Research Roadmap, Focus on Metals Related Toxic Emissions. The maximum cost of this project is $150,000. And we have a detailed scope of work and scoring criteria available online. Those are accessible through our solicitation landing page, and a link for that will be available in the chat. So a few important dates related to this solicitation. Pre-proposals for this contract are due by email to our general research email by Friday, August 5th at 5 p.m. On August 26th, we will contact everybody who submitted a pre-proposal And one pre-proposal out of everyone who submits one will be selected to be developed into a full proposal. By September 9th, the person or the pre-proposal selected will have to incorporate any comments we provide and provide a full proposal. After a full proposal is submitted to us, then we go through the contract execution process, and we estimate that sometime between December of this year and February of next year, we would be executing and kicking off the project. A draft final report would be due sometime in the middle of 2024, and we expect final results and the contract closing in early 2025. Okay. So the pre-proposal has multiple requirements. Very importantly, we have a detailed template on our solicitation landing page. So please use that template. It's required that you use that template to submit a pre-proposal on this project. The pre-proposal template gives instructions, but I will go over each of the individual elements here. For your scope of work pre-proposal, it should not exceed 5 pages. It should include an approach for conducting the research or the project. As a tip, you should definitely check the scoring criteria that we provide, because that gives you some guidance on how we are scoring pre-proposals. And another good tip is to not directly copy the text that we provide in the scope of work. So please put it in your own words. We also require that you submit a CV or a statement of qualifications for your entire project team. You can provide a CV that's already prepared, or you can provide a more tailored CV that's abridged and that is focused on the skills needed for this project. We also ask for you to describe the relevant experience of the team and how it is appropriate for the requirements of this project. We ask for a preliminary budget. We provide this table in the template, so it's very straightforward. You do not have to get this pre-approved by your Contracts and Grants office. That approval would not apply until and if your pre-proposal is selected to be developed into a full proposal. We also ask for a cultural competency or humility statement, and we will go over some of these things in detail in the next few slides. Also, if you do have questions, you can put them in the chat now, but we will hold off on verbal questions till the end of the slides. So we have several equity deliverables that are common to all of our projects, and then some specific projects have additional ones. So ones that are common to all our projects, we ask for plain language outreach materials, and we work with you on those. We do ask for quarterly updates that we can post to our website to increase transparency on the progress of active contracts. We ask for an equity implications section and a plain language summary in the final report. And we ask that peer-reviewed articles be publicly available. Specific to this project, we are also asking for a cultural competency statement. And we also ask that the research team have implicit bias or racial equity training. In this project in particular, because you're going to be working with community members and community partners, we ask that you compensate them for their time and their expertise. And as part of the project, there is a community engagement plan that is one of the very important tasks of this project. Okay, so we're going to go over cultural competency. What it is and what it isn't. So cultural competency or cultural humility is a stance taken towards culture, not a discrete status or simple mastery of particular knowledge and skills. Cultural and linguistics competence is a set of congruent behaviors, attitudes, and policies that come together in a system, agency, or among professionals that enables effective work in cross-cultural situations. A culturally competent researcher is prepared to engage with diverse segments of communities to include cultural and contextual dimensions important to community engagement, project development, project implementation, and interpretation of results. They also take time to self-evaluate on behaviors toward academic and non-academic research partners and research subjects. And a lack of cultural competency can result in biases informing the interpretation of results, ignoring the knowledge and expertise of community members, and possibly harming a community that is part of a research project. So in your cultural competency statement, we ask for something that's a maximum of 2 pages. In it, you should discuss your research team's perspectives on equity and knowledge production as it relates to this project specifically, especially in the context of doing research with and or about marginalized communities. And it asks you to think about how your research team situates your research work in a non-academic domain. Describe your research team's approach and practices related to this project to support self-evaluation and self-critique, and the ways the team examines your beliefs and your cultural identities and how these relate to your work, especially what's proposed in this project. And finally, how does your research team cultivate supportive and equitable relationships with academic and non-academic research partners and research subjects, particularly considering potential power dynamics? So you should be describing your team's specific approach, actions, and accountability measures. And what are your team's practices to protect against harmful and or extractive relationships as it relates to this project? Okay, we're gonna talk a little bit about contracting, although there is a very detailed frequently asked questions document available online that answers a lot of questions about our contracting process and requirements. CARB funds contracts and not grants. And we're required by the Health and Safety Code to look for expertise in the University of California and California State Universities. So the principal investigators for this project must come from the UC, from your UC or a CSU. Now, those PIs can subcontract with any other university, private research institute or firm, or a community-based organization. Subcontractors can receive up to 25% of the budget, and in rare cases, up to 50% if it can be demonstrated that no expertise exists within the UC or CSU and the contract requirements call for it. We do have an interagency agreement, that is CARB has an interagency agreement with the UCs and CSUs to set the overhead rate at 25%. And again, it's a good idea to look at the frequently asked questions for more details. Okay, so we're gonna jump into the project background for this project. So the California Air Resources Board Air Toxic Program aims to reduce exposure to air emissions of toxic chemicals for all Californians. There are several components to the program, including identifying and controlling of air toxic substances, public notifications of significant toxic exposures, and a process to reduce these risks. And also addressing health impacts to communities, children, and other sensitive receptors. There's a lot of related legislation, including AB 1807, AB 2588 related to hotspots, and AB 617, or the Community Air Protection Program. Through these various efforts, the 30,000 facilities have reduced toxic emissions, and there's been an 80% reduction in cancer risk since 1990. However, localized sources do persist and impact specific communities. For CARB, toxics are still a high priority. And in particular, there is specific concern around metals and metal processing facilities and commercial sources, specifically also from uncontrolled sources. We have a longer list of metals of concern, but here's a shorter list, and that includes hexavalent chromium, lead, cobalt, nickel, copper, arsenic, and cadmium. We've also collected concerns from various communities over the past few years around this topic specifically. Okay, So the project motivation and objective can be broken down over 3 main objectives. We'd like to explore strategies over the next few years to address some of the concerns that I just discussed in the previous slides, and specifically elevate community concerns and leverage community lived experience and expertise. So the objective of this project includes funding a community engagement project with an interested community, compiling a literature review that includes the literature, public comments, and any past successes in mitigating metals and toxic emissions, compiling that all into a single white paper, and creating a research roadmap that's based on the lived experience, concerns, and suggested research strategies from the interested community. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the individual project tasks. Task 1 consists of the white paper. So that's going to include a literature review that should include information on toxic emissions from metal processing facilities and area sources, anything on exposure, monitoring capability, health risks, etc. The white paper should also include a compilation of prior public comments related to concerns on exposure, sources of concern, and any activity that's been noticed by community members. This white paper should also include any past successes on community engagement efforts, mitigation strategies that have been implemented around toxic sources, and what the outcomes were of those mitigation strategies. For task 2, the researcher should identify an interested community. The researcher should work with AB 617 and air toxics program staff. They should reach out to communities impacted by metal processing emissions. And ideally, your pre-proposal will include an established community partner already. You'll also be required to consult with the relevant air district. Task 3 consists of the community engagement plan. As you develop the community engagement plan, the proposal should include outreach methods. How will you communicate to community members that you are holding community engagement meetings? What type of meeting frequency and schedule will the community engagement plan include? What are you doing for meeting accessibility, transportation accessibility? Will you be providing recordings? And how will you collect comments offline for people who cannot make it to the meetings? And what sort of language justice and accessibility measures will be taken to, again, increase accessibility to the engagement during the meetings? Will you be using any facilitation methods during the meetings? And how are you collecting input? How are you ensuring that you're getting meaningful participation and engagement during public meetings? The community engagement plan, that is, should be reviewed and approved by the community before proceeding. And the project timeline should include time for this review. And then you should also include in the plan how all of the efforts will be documented, how progress will be tracked, and any interim reports that are appropriate. So as a result of the community engagement that comes out of the plan, the researcher in task 4 will be developing research priorities. These research priorities should consider the sources of concern, the emissions activity, the community observations of activity patterns, any research or information gaps identified in the literature review, etc. And so the strategies should include, or the research priorities should include short and long-term priorities and strategies. And it should include some equity implications of these priorities as well. For task 5, that is the community-centric research roadmap. So this task combines tasks 1, 3, and 4, and it should provide recommendations for future strategies that can be combined, that combines existing air toxics control and mitigation strategies with on-the-ground knowledge. Finally, For task 6, this includes the final report dissemination. So the researcher will be disseminating the community-centric research roadmap to all relevant parties and gathering input. Okay, so we have several deliverables for this project, and they're spelled out clearly in the scope of work that is provided online. At the pre-proposal stage, again, you should be using the template, and the pre-proposal should be informed by the scope of work and scoring criteria that we provide online. It should include any relevant prior community engagement experience and include the cultural competency or humility statement. At the beginning of the contract, you need to provide documentation that implicit bias or similar training is being carried out by the research team. And there should be plain language outreach deliverables as well. During the contract, we are asking, we typically ask for quarterly progress reports and conference calls. And there should be consultation calls with CARB and stakeholders. We also will ask for a draft white paper and the draft community engagement plan, which should be reviewed and approved by the community. Prior to the contract closing, we ask for a draft final report. This will include the white paper, the final community engagement plan and summary of engagement and outreach activities, and the community reviewed community-centric research roadmap, including the research priority list and policy recommendations. We will also be asking for a plain language summary and an equity implications section. So finally, not as part of the draft final report, but separately, we asked for a plain language outreach deliverable. And then once the draft final report is approved and reviewed and approved, then we ask for a final report and a virtual or in-person seminar. Okay, so that is the end of the slides. Now we're going to open up the floor to questions. So please use the raised hand function. I do see there is one question in the chat, but it looks like Sarah is trying to answer it. So in the meantime, I can take any raised hands as well. I see Moses, you may unmute and ask your question.
Thank you, Sonia. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Yeah, good. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Moses Huerta. I'm a senior activist here in the city of Parma. I'm also a public safety commissioner here in the city as well. I am currently working on a project as a community member in reference to hexavalent chromium. So I'm very interested in connecting in this information and in the education that's already in trying to understand how the connections, how as a community member do I have to wait to get into the queue with the universities, or how so this is all new to me, so I apologize, but that's where my question, how would I start with this? Because I know this is a great opportunity and what I'm working on here now. As you know, hexavalent chromium has been a big issue here, especially in my city. It's one of the towns. It's very heavily populated with a lot of metal industry. So to the subject at hand, this is a prime spot, if you will, for a lot of learning and actually engaging and learning a lot of life. So as a community member, I just if you would, I know on the slide, but give me a little more detail as how I can start connecting, or how I can best position my community or my project as well to share that information or knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moses. That's a good question. So there are a few ways you can do that. So we do have this project on the Empower Innovation website. So you can put your information on there saying that you're interested in partnering with a UC or CSU researcher. I would suggest also, I don't know if you have any contacts with any local UC or CSU researchers in your area, but if you happen to have contact with anyone at your local UC or CSU, you can reach out and see if they're interested in applying for this project with you. And you can also add your information in the chat. And if there are any UC or CSU researchers who watch this video afterwards or who are here, they can also reach out to you. I don't know if anyone else from CARB would like to jump in on other ways to find partnerships. Hopefully that answers your question. We don't necessarily have another forum for putting people together, but the Empower Innovation is supposed to be that forum. It's ran by the California Energy Commission, and it has a nice interface, and you can create a profile on it very easily and use it to find partnerships on this project and any other project that they have posted there.
Okay. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you, Moses. Okay, I see Victor. I see your hand. You can unmute and ask your question.
Hey, hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. I saw the original solicitation that allowed us to register for this, but I am unclear as to what type of projects you guys are looking at. Are you looking at, for instance, are we looking at mitigation of problems? Are we looking at quantification of problems? Are we looking, I mean, I don't know. I guess that's part. Would educational projects be acceptable? And so that's the part that I am unsure about.
Yes, thank you for that question. So this is a community engagement project only, and the main deliverable is the research roadmap. So probably the pre-proposal that gets selected to develop a full proposal will already have experience in community engagement, and with that experience we'll be able to elevate the voices of community members. We'll know how to run meetings, collect input, share knowledge, and have a really good equal share of information between the researchers and the community members. And then that final product, the research roadmap, is something that could potentially be funded in future fiscal years. But even if we have that research roadmap laid out with all the priorities, it still needs to fit within our budget and still would need to be approved by our board in future funding years. So there is the caveat that we're not guaranteeing that we will do this research in the future, but this is a high priority. And so again, this project is really focusing on collecting community needs around the topic of metal toxics.
Okay, and what is the timeline for this?
That's a good question. So we are giving a little more time than usual to submit pre-proposals. We usually give about 6 to 7 weeks, but we're giving more like 8 weeks to submit a pre-proposal. So August 5th, pre-proposals are due. And then a few weeks later, we let everyone know, whether they will be selected or not to develop a full proposal. And then a full proposal is due, and we have to go through the contract execution process. And at that point, sometime between December of this year and February of next year, we actually start the project.
Okay, and the project will last about 2 years, is what I'm saying.
Yes, 24 months.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Do we have any other questions? So again, we will provide these slides and the recording of this meeting online on our solicitation landing page. The scope of work and the scoring criteria are very detailed, and those are available online now, as well as the frequently asked questions if there's any questions on contracting. And again, if you want to share your contact information through the chat, that is great. Yeah, are there any other questions from anybody? If not, I think we can end the meeting a little bit
Sorry.
early. Oh, did I hear someone asking a question?
Yes, sorry to interrupt, but my question was, how did you come up with the reduction in toxic emissions in 25,000 facilities?
Oh, that was on the main CARB website. That's on
Okay.
the main CARB website, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maina. Are there any final comments or questions? Great. Then thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. You can send general questions about our research program to our research email. And yeah, we can be available to answer general questions, but we can't answer very specific questions about this project. Again, a lot of the details are available in the scope of work and the scoring criteria and the solicitation landing page. So with that, thank you all so much for your attention, and have a great afternoon.